6 wives, 2 executed, 11 pregnancies, 5 dead children. For 500 years, the story has usually blamed the women. Catherine was too old. Anne was too ambitious. Jane was lucky. Anne of Cleves was unattractive. Katherine Howard was reckless. Katherine Parr survived because the king died first. That is the familiar version. But buried inside the medical pattern of Henry VIII's marriages is a different possibility. A possibility no one in Tudor England had the language to name, and no one at Henry's court would have dared to say out loud. What if the problem was not Catherine, not Anne, not any of the 6 women? What if the common denominator was the king himself? This is not just the story of Henry VIII's wives, it is a case file. Pregnancy after pregnancy, loss after loss, marriage after marriage. And when you place every birth, miscarriage, stillbirth, execution, and remarriage side by side, in order, something begins to appear. Not a random tragedy, a pattern. A pattern so consistent that the reign of Henry VIII starts to look less like the story of one king searching for an heir, and more like the story of a court protecting one man's image at the expense of every woman near him. And the answer, if the strongest medical theory is right, was written in his blood before he ever sat on the throne. May 1536, the Tower of London. Inside a cold hall of stone, George Boleyn, Viscount Rochford, stands accused of crimes so explosive that even reading the charges aloud is dangerous. Treason, adultery with the Queen, incest with his own sister, Anne Boleyn. The charges are almost certainly manufactured, built from frightened servants, broken men, political pressure, and the one fact everyone in the room understands: Henry VIII has already decided the outcome. George Boleyn knows he is probably dead. Then the court gives him a written question. He is meant to read it silently, then answer yes or no. But George reads it aloud. The question touches the one subject no one is supposed to discuss in public: the king's failures in the royal bedroom. The accusation is not simply gossip. It suggests that Anne has mocked Henry's ability to perform as a man and as a husband. It turns the king's most private humiliation into a public wound. In Tudor England, that is political dynamite. Because Henry is not only a husband, he is the Lord's anointed king. His masculinity, his fertility, his divine authority, and the future of the Tudor dynasty are tangled together. If Henry cannot do what the crown requires in private, then the whole performance of sacred power begins to crack. 4 days later, Anne Boleyn is dead. 11 days after that, Henry marries Jane Seymour. A man who remarries 11 days after executing his second wife is not simply grieving, he is afraid. But afraid of what? To answer that, we have to go back to the beginning. Henry VIII, Henry VIII's father, had not calmly inherited the English throne. He took it in 1485 on a battlefield after decades of civil war had torn England apart. The Tudor dynasty was new. Its roots were shallow. Its claim was useful, but fragile. Every courtier, every noble family, every foreign ambassador understood the danger that never really left the room. One bad succession and England could bleed again. So when Henry VIII became king in 1509, he seemed like the answer to a national prayer. He was 17, athletic, educated, charismatic, a living portrait of the Renaissance prince. He inherited a stable kingdom, a full treasury, and a prestigious marriage to Catherine of Aragon, daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. Everything looked secure, but under the gold, music, tournaments, and pageantry, there was already one fixed anxiety. Henry needed a son, not wanted, needed. His legitimacy depended on it. His dynasty depended on it. His place in history depended on it. And beneath all the theology, diplomacy, and legal argument, there was something much more human: fear. The fear of being remembered as the king who ended his own line. That fear drives almost everything that follows: the marriages, the executions, the break with Rome, the destruction of monasteries, the humiliation of queens, the rewriting of laws, the obsession with bodies and heirs. Henry VIII could never fully accept that the one biological result he needed most was something he could not command. That refusal is what turns the story into a tragedy. September 1509, Catherine of Aragon is pregnant. Prayers fill the chapels. Gifts are ordered. The future seems safe. On January 31st, 1510, she miscarries. A daughter. Henry is disappointed, but not yet alarmed. They are young. Misfortune is not a pattern. By the autumn of 1510, Catherine is pregnant again. This time she carries the child to term. On New Year's Day 1511, Prince Henry is born. Healthy, strong, perfect. England has its male heir.
The king celebrates with tournaments, bonfires, and public joy. 52 days later, the baby is dead. No warning, no explanation Tudor medicine can offer. Just a sudden loss that breaks Catherine and leaves Henry searching for answers that do not exist. The physicians call it the will of God. There is nothing else to say. In 1513, another boy is stillborn. Henry is away in France on campaign. Catherine buries another son without him. In 1514, another boy is born. He survives only briefly. 3 sons, 3 deaths, and now the whispers begin. In Tudor England, the health of a child was usually placed on the woman's body, so suspicion moves towards Catherine. Is she cursed? Was her first marriage to Henry's brother Arthur somehow a spiritual contamination? Has God rejected this union? Henry does not say everything publicly, but doubt settles in him. It hardens. Then, on February 18, 1516, Catherine gives birth to a healthy daughter, Mary. Mary breeds, Mary cries, Mary lives. Catherine has proven she can bear a living child, but Henry still does not have the son he believes England requires. In 1518, Catherine has another pregnancy, another daughter, stillborn, and after that, she never conceives again. 6 pregnancies in 9 years, 1 surviving daughter, 5 children dead. Her body has barely been allowed to recover between losses. Grief becomes permanent. Then in 1519, the story turns. A young woman named Elizabeth Blount, known as Bessie, gives birth to Henry's son, Henry Fitzroy, and Henry does something extraordinary. He publicly acknowledges the boy, gives him titles, and raises him as visible proof of one thing: Henry can father a living son. So the problem, Henry decides, must be Catherine, and the court agrees because the court is very good at agreeing with the king. But hold on to one detail. Catherine's pattern is not simply that children die. It is that the early pregnancies look different from the later ones. One son survives 52 days. Later sons die earlier.
That matters, because what looks like random heartbreak may actually be escalation. By the 1520s, Henry believes he has found his answer. Anne Boleyn. Sharp, educated, politically dangerous. She refuses to become another royal mistress. She keeps Henry at a distance for years, accepting nothing less than marriage. Henry becomes consumed by her. He tears England away from Rome. He declares himself supreme head of the Church of England. He breaks his first marriage, separates Catherine from Mary, and remakes the religious life of the kingdom. All of it for the sons Anne will give him. They marry in secret in January 1533. On September 7, 1533, Anne gives birth. A daughter, Elizabeth. Henry's disappointment is immediate and visible. He has remade England for sons, not another princess. But Anne soon becomes pregnant again. Then comes January 1536. Henry is jousting when his horse falls. He crashes heavily in armor. Reports suggest he may have been unconscious for a time. His leg is injured in a way that never properly heals. An ulcer will trouble him for the rest of his life. Some historians have wondered whether the accident also changed him mentally. Days later, Anne miscarries. A boy. About 15 weeks. Anne says the shock of Henry's accident caused it. The terror of thinking he might be dead. The hours of uncertainty. Henry has already begun to rewrite the story. Anne bewitched him, he decides. She seduced him into destroying his kingdom and gave him nothing. The charges come quickly: adultery, treason, incest, all designed not merely to punish Anne, but to erase her. On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn is beheaded on Tower Green. 11 days later, Henry marries Jane Seymour. But here is the thing that is easy to miss. Anne Boleyn's reproductive story resembles Catherine's: a first successful child, then losses. Different women, different backgrounds, different bodies, same husband, the same direction of failure. That is not proof, but it is an unsettling clue. On October 12, 1537, after a long and difficult labor, Jane Seymour gives birth to a son, Edward. At last, the missing heir exists. Cannons fire, bells ring, England celebrates. 12 days later, Jane is dead. Fever, infection, a catastrophic postpartum decline. Henry is genuinely devastated.
Years later, he asks to be buried beside her because she gave him the one thing no other wife had. But Jane's story raises a harder question. Henry fathered Edward when he was 45. His health was already visibly declining. His injured leg was already a problem. So Henry could still conceive. Why then does conception seem to stop after that? 3 marriages follow. No pregnancies, no children, nothing. On January 6, 1540, Henry marries Anne of Cleves, a German princess chosen for political reasons. Her portrait, painted by Hans Holbein, shows a perfectly respectable woman. Contemporary descriptions do not support the cartoon version of her as grotesque or repulsive. Henry meets her in person at Rochester, and something goes wrong immediately.
Whether the problem is truly Anne's appearance or something failing inside Henry's own body is the question no one at court is allowed to ask. They marry because backing out would be a diplomatic humiliation. Then Henry admits he cannot consummate the marriage. He tries. He fails. And his explanation reveals almost everything about the man he has become. He insists his body works. He claims the problem is Anne. She disgusts him. She does not excite him. She is the reason he cannot perform. But no reliable contemporary source outside Henry's own wounded pride describes Anne of Cleves as monstrous. The safer reading is brutal. Henry cannot admit impotence because impotence would threaten the image he has spent his life defending. So Anne carries the blame. The marriage is annulled. Anne survives because she accepts humiliation quickly enough. Next comes Katherine Howard, young,
Politically useful. Trapped inside a court that has already learned how disposable queens can be. Henry is old enough to be her father. He is physically decaying, emotionally volatile, and desperate to feel restored. There is no pregnancy. When evidence of Catherine's sexual past and alleged adultery emerges, Henry reacts not with measured law but with annihilation. In 1542, Katherine Howard is executed before she is 20. Then comes Katherine Parr. Intelligent, careful, theological, skilled at surviving dangerous rooms. She becomes Henry's sixth wife in 1543. Again, no pregnancy. She survives not because the pattern has ended, but because Henry dies first. By the end, the reproductive record is stark. Catherine of Aragon, repeated losses, one surviving daughter.
Anne Boleyn, one surviving daughter, then losses. Jane Seymour, one son, then death. Bessie Blount, one son by Henry, surviving into adolescence. The final three wives, no pregnancies at all. For centuries, historians have looked for explanations. Most of the easy ones collapse. The popular answer is syphilis. It is dramatic. It sounds plausible. It has appeared again and again in popular retellings, almost as if it were established fact. But the evidence is weak. Syphilis leaves traces. Secondary syphilis can produce rashes, lesions, fever, patchy hair loss. Later stages can bring neurological decline, blindness, paralysis, dementia. Henry VIII's body and health were watched constantly. Ambassadors reported on him. Courtiers whispered. Physicians treated him. Yet there is no solid contemporary record showing Henry with the classic symptoms of syphilis. There is also no clear record of mercury treatment, the common Tudor treatment for the disease. And Henry's documented mistresses complicate the theory. Bessie Blount later had children with other men. Mary Boleyn also had children. If Henry had infected them with syphilis, we would expect stronger signs in the records. Syphilis survives because it is memorable, not because it explains the pattern well. The second answer is diabetes. This is more plausible for Henry's later life. By the 1540s, he is obese. His leg wound will not heal. He is exhausted, unstable, and physically diminished. Diabetes could help explain erectile dysfunction and the total lack of later pregnancies. But it does not explain Catherine's losses decades earlier. It does not explain Anne Boleyn's pattern. It is an answer for the ending, not the whole story. So what explains the whole pattern? In 2010, researchers Katrina Banks-Whitley and Kyra Kramer published a carefully argued historical medical theory. Henry VIII may have been Kell positive. The Kell blood group system is separate from the ABO and Rh systems most people know. Some people carry a protein on their red blood cells called the Kell antigen, most do not. When a Kell-positive father and a Kell-negative mother conceive a Kell-positive child, the first pregnancy may survive because the mother's immune system has not yet been sensitized. But during childbirth, miscarriage, or bleeding, fetal blood can enter the mother's bloodstream. Her immune system meets the Kell antigen and identifies it as foreign. It builds antibodies.
After that, any later Kell-positive fetus may be attacked from inside the pregnancy. The antibodies cross the placenta. They interfere with the baby's red blood cells. The fetus can become dangerously anemic. The risk of miscarriage, stillbirth, or newborn death rises. And crucially, the pattern can worsen after sensitization. Now map that onto Catherine of Aragon. Her first known pregnancy ends in miscarriage. The next son, born in 1511, lives for 52 days. Not stillborn, not dead at birth, alive for nearly 2 months, then lost. Later, male pregnancies die earlier. Mary survives, possibly because she did not inherit the dangerous antigen combination. Then another daughter is stillborn. It does not prove Kell incompatibility, but the shape is disturbingly close. Now map it onto Anne Boleyn. Elizabeth is born alive and healthy. Then come later losses, including the miscarried boy in 1536. Again, first surviving child, then failure. Bessie Blount has one child with Henry Fitzroy, a first pregnancy, not yet affected by repeated sensitization. Jane Seymour has one child with Henry, Edward, again, a first pregnancy. The exceptions begin to look less like exceptions. They fit. Whitley and Kramer also connected the possibility of Kell positivity to another condition, McLeod syndrome. McLeod syndrome is rare and associated with the Kell blood group system. In men, it can emerge later in life and may involve muscle weakness, movement problems, psychiatric changes, and cognitive decline. No one can diagnose Henry VIII across 5 centuries with certainty, but the theory is tempting because it offers a single framework for 2 mysteries at once: the reproductive disasters of his marriages and the alarming transformation of the king himself. The young Henry is energetic, educated, charming, athletic. The later Henry is increasingly cruel, paranoid, impulsive, physically ruined, and unable to reason calmly through problems his younger self might have handled differently. Injury, pain, power, ego, and politics all matter. But Kell and MacLeod give the story a biological shadow the Tudors could not see. We cannot test Henry's blood. We cannot close the case. But the Kell theory does something the older explanations do not. It accounts for the timeline. It accounts for the losses. It accounts for the surviving first children. And it does not require us to pretend the pattern is random. So was Henry VIII infertile?
Not in the ordinary sense. Infertility means the inability to conceive. Henry conceived multiple times with multiple women. He fathered Henry Fitzroy. He fathered Mary. He fathered Elizabeth. He fathered Edward. Henry could conceive. The more unsettling possibility is that he carried a biological factor that made repeated pregnancies with some partners increasingly dangerous after the first exposure. He could not have known. No one in the 16th century understood blood groups. No one understood maternal antibodies. No one had a vocabulary for a mother's immune system attacking a fetus because of an inherited blood antigen. In that sense, Henry is not morally guilty for the biology, but biology is not the whole story. The human disaster came from what Henry did with the pain and fear he could not understand. He blamed, he destroyed, he rewrote. Catherine of Aragon became stubborn, disobedient, inconvenient. He divorced her, stripped her title, separated her from Mary, and left her to die isolated, still insisting she was his true wife. Anne Boleyn became a witch, a seductress, a traitor. He executed her on charges many people in that courtroom knew were politically useful inventions. Anne had given him Elizabeth, the daughter he treated as failure. That daughter would become one of the greatest monarchs England ever produced. Anne of Cleves became ugly because Henry needed her to be ugly. Her humiliation protected him from admitting weakness. Katherine Howard became disposable before she was even 20. Katherine Parr survived because she was brilliant, careful, and because Henry died before the machinery of blame turned fully against her. And then history delivers its final irony. Henry spent his entire reign terrified of being remembered as the king who ended his own line. He is remembered as exactly that. Edward VI becomes king at 9 and dies at 15 without an heir. Mary I, the daughter Henry humiliated and declared illegitimate, becomes queen and dies childless. Then comes Elizabeth, the daughter of the executed traitor, the child Henry treated as disappointment. Elizabeth I takes the throne at 25 and reigns for 45 years. She defeats the Spanish Armada. She transforms England into a naval power. Her reign becomes inseparable from Shakespeare, exploration, propaganda, danger, and political brilliance. And she does it without a husband.
Without surrendering her body to the same dynastic machine that consumed her mother, exhausted her stepmothers, and haunted every woman before her. She refuses the game, and she wins. The Tudor dynasty ends with her anyway. No child. No continuation of Henry's line. All the destruction. All the fear. All the broken marriages. All the women crushed under the demand for a male heir. And the legacy Henry tried to force into existence dissolves in 2 generations. Henry VIII spent his life afraid of one thing. In the end,
he became that thing. And the daughter he rejected became the one history calls great. That is the real story. Not the version that blames the women and moves on. The version that follows the evidence until the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. One man, one biological possibility no one could name, one court, one church, and one legal system built to make sure blame always moved away from power. The cover-up was not necessarily a secret plan. It was structural. Power protects itself by creating stories that place guilt on the people least able to fight back. 6 different women, 6 different lives, one common denominator. And the deepest wound in this story is not dynastic. It is what happened to the women whose bodies became the battlefield for one man's terror of failure. If this changed the way you see Henry VIII, tell us what you think. Does the Kell theory hold up? Has history protected Henry for 500 years by blaming the women around him? This is Historical Controversies. We will see you in the next one.